In the good old days, known as the Dark Age, in the Igbo tribe of eastern Nigeria, when there was no evil thoughts, the world was believed by the ancient Africans to rest at the base of a towering breadfruit tree. The spirits see the top of the trees as their own ground, and no one feared thieves or invaders. For there were no fences, farm produce were left openly behind the huts, untouched by dishonest hands. In those times, all lived with the fear of the gods. Kamalo, the god of thunder, watched over, ever ready to strike offenders at the mere mention of his name, when oaths were taken and truth could not be hidden. Yet, in the village of Umuabor in Bende, the fear of the unknown still grips the entire community. Men of the underworld from unknown villages are believed to maraud through other villages' forests, hunting for heads to answer the call of their great Ikro drum as heroes of their land. Nnenna, from her childhood, had heard such stories, but no one had ever come forward as a victim or an eyewitness. Little did Nnenna know she would one day experience it. Though she outsmarted the manhunter, her stubborn last-born child became the victim of these year-long myths and legends. Now, please, get your friends and family, have a seat, and enjoy the rest of the story. And don't forget that in this day of modern insecurity, wisdom and fast thinking can still be applied when in the midst of sudden predicament, just like Nnenna did in the olden days. Thank you.
In a small remote village called Umuabor, nestled deep in the forest of eastern Nigeria, there was a time of great fear and uncertainty. Dark days had descended upon the village and its neighbors. Tales of mysterious manhunters spread like wildfire, creating a cloud of terror that blanketed the entire region. These manhunters were not ordinary criminals or wild animals. They were believed to be ruthless marauders who preyed on the weak and defenseless. Their victims were mostly young people, women, and children, and they struck without warning, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. To protect themselves, the villagers quickly realized that they had to be cautious. They adopted a strict rule. No one would go to the farm alone. Women and children were only allowed to leave home for the farms in groups or accompanied by an able-bodied man, often the father of the house or another strong male relative. This was not just a precaution but a matter of survival. The manhunters, it was said, would never attack if they saw a grown man in the company of their targets. One rainy afternoon, in the midst of the planting season, a woman named Nnenna found herself in a dangerous predicament. Nnenna had gone to her farm with her 7 children, as her husband was away trading goods in a nearby village. They had been tending to their crops when the sky darkened and heavy rain began to pour. Seeking shelter, they retreated into the small farm hut used for such weather emergencies. As the rain pounded the earth outside, to pass time, Nnenna and her children busied themselves by roasting corn over a small fire, sharing stories and laughter. The comforting smell of the roasting corn filled the air, momentarily distracting them from the dangers that lurked in the surrounding forest. They were unaware that danger was looming, and then, without warning, the door of the hut swung open, and a stranger entered. A manhunter. Nnenna's heart froze in her chest. She knew the tales well. This man was not here to seek shelter from the rain, he was here for blood. The man, his eyes gleaming with an eerie calm, glanced around the room. Nnenna quickly realized that her only hope was to outsmart him. Her children were her priority, and she had to protect them at all costs. Gathering her wits, Nnenna put on a warm smile and welcomed the manhunter as though he was a guest. She offered him corn from their fire, speaking softly and kindly, hiding her terror behind a mask of hospitality. The manhunter accepted the roasted corn, chewing slowly, his eyes scanning the children, calculating. As she served him more corn, a plan began to form in Nnenna's mind. She had to get her children out, one by one, without raising suspicion. She gave a quick glance to her eldest daughter and then, with a smile, said to the manhunter, "Let my child fetch more corn for you from the farm. It is the best we have." As the eldest daughter, she is almost 18 years of age. She already knew the glance. She left the hut, vanishing into the forest. When the first child did not return, Nnenna pretended to be angry and sent her second child to find out what was holding the first. One by one, she sent her children out under the guise of fetching more corn. They each slipped away into the safety of the forest. By the time only her youngest son, Obinna, who was 8 years old, was left, Nnenna's plan was nearly complete. But Obinna, known for his stubbornness, refused to go. "I'm not going," he said. "The others haven't come back, and I know something's wrong." Nnenna's heart sank as she pleaded with him to leave, but Obinna stood his ground. Left with no choice, Nnenna told the manhunter that she would go herself to check on her children. With one last glance at Obinna, she escaped into the rain, leaving her stubborn son behind. As the hours passed and darkness fell, the manhunter realized he had been tricked. The woman and her children were not coming back. In anger, he turned his gaze to the last child, Obinna, who sat in the corner, still defiant. The manhunter smiled grimly. He could not leave empty-handed. That night, the stubborn boy became his sacrificial lamb. Nnenna's children that narrowly escaped by whiskers, instead of alerting their father or the elders of the village, went home undisturbed, with the hope that their mother and Obinna would also escape as well. Not knowing that Obinna had displayed the stubbornness he was known for, even in the midst of danger. Obinna was a child that hardly ran any errand or do any house chores at home freely, without murmuring or agitating. And he was always being pardoned because he was the last born. By the time Nnenna reached the village, night had fallen. Breathless, she burst into her home and found her husband, shaking with fear and urgency. "Where is my son? Where is Obinna?" Her husband screamed in a loud voice. "The manhunters have come to our farm," she cried. Nnenna's husband dashed out of their house, raising alarm for the entire village to know about the tragedy that is about to befallen his family. As soon as the echo from his loud voice reverberated across the village, shouting, "Ewu! Ewu! I am finished. Obinna, my son, is gone. The myth of manhunter has become a reality in my life." The villagers and the elders gathered. Immediately, the village emergency gong was sounded, its echo ringing through the air. The villagers did not hesitate. Men gathered swiftly, armed with machetes and spears, ready to rescue Obinna. They hurried into the forest toward Nnenna's farm, their torches lighting up the dark path. But by the time they reached the farm, it was too late. The manhunter and Obinna were gone. The villagers searched in vain, their calls echoing through the trees. They found no trace of the man or the boy. Heartbroken, Nnenna and her husband returned home, their grief weighing heavily upon them. The villagers, too, mourned with them. The village myth had turned into a devastating reality for Nnenna, and her heart broke knowing she had lost her son. In the days that followed, the village of Umuabor was thrown into mourning. Obinna's death was a painful reminder of the ever-present danger that had long haunted their lives. Nnenna struggled to come to terms with the loss of her stubborn but beloved child. She had managed to save 6 of her children, but the thought that the myth had become a tragedy for her family shook her to the core. She regretted ever going to the farm without any able-bodied man or her husband, thereby violating their early precaution adopted by the village. In response to Obinna's tragic demise, the village leaders and elders knew they had to act. The villagers could not continue living in fear. A meeting was called, and new security measures were put in place. The men of the village organized themselves into groups, forming a security outfit dedicated to protecting their people. They would take turns patrolling the fields and surrounding forests from morning until evening, ensuring that no one was left vulnerable. Each security group carried whistles, and they developed a secret whistling code known only to the villagers. As the men spread out across the fields, they would periodically sound their whistles, a rhythmic echo that reverberated through the trees. It became a beacon of hope, giving the women and children working in the fields a sense of security and confidence, knowing that the village men were watching over them. A strict new law was also enforced. No one was allowed to stay on the farm beyond 5 p.m. Anyone caught violating this rule would face a heavy fine, paying with their farm produce. The fine served as a stern reminder of the dangers that lurked after dark, and the villagers respected the rule, knowing it was for their safety. With the security groups in place and the whistling sounds echoing through the village, life slowly began to return to normal. The villagers could once again tend to their farms without the constant weight of fear on their shoulders. But Nnenna and her family would never forget the loss of Obinna. His death had brought about a new era of vigilance in the village, and though he was gone, his memory lived on in the hearts of all who knew him. This story teaches us about the power of intelligence and quick thinking in the face of danger. Nnenna's clever plan saved 6 of her children and herself from the manhunter, but it also highlights the importance of cooperation and obedience. Obinna's stubbornness, though innocent, cost him his life. Furthermore, the story reminds us that in times of crisis, community is essential. The village's collective grief over Obinna's loss led them to adopt stronger security measures, ensuring the safety of everyone. Through this tragedy, they learned the value of vigilance, preparedness, and unity in protecting the vulnerable. In the face of danger, the strength of a community lies not just in its individual members, but in how they come together to safeguard each other. I hope you enjoyed the wonderful true life story. We are committed to bringing more. Thank you for stopping by.